What's up, y'all? This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I'm not going to give anything for the future, nothing about expectations, but the last episode I did a little intro with Frank the guitar, so I just did one as well. Just a little tiny couple notes. But we are In the Image Clothing Company. Oh my goodness. Today is the 4th of January, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. I just ate some crackers. I guess that's what's in my throat choking me. So, In the Image Clothing Company, we have three sides to us. I'm still choking up. It's all good, dude. Anyway, this is Frank the guitar. Maybe that's why I didn't quite address that. This is Frank the guitar. One side of our company is In the Image Clothing Company Music, where I do music things. We do music things. We'll get into music things. This is Frank the guitar. And I'm a fingerstyle guitarist. So this is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. We also have In the Image Clothing Company, the main side of things, where we discuss the anatomy of the human body and clothing, because clothing is the only thing that's placed physically on our bodies at all times. So it has a really high potential, the highest out of anything that we as human beings interact with in our life, to alter our body's natural workings. Now, I'm going to give a little spiel about what our company is, and then we'll get into this episode of the podcast. So, In the Image Clothing Company, we address the skeletal system of the human body, because the fat content comes and goes at different points in our lives for different reasons. The muscle mass as well. If you don't work out, you're just going to have the amount of muscle mass that's naturally there, or you can work out and gain really actually an unnatural amount of muscle mass. So we address the skeletal system because that's the natural foundation of our body, and it's about a positioning. Because all the musculature does anyway is just operate the skeletal system. So if it's within an imbalance, then doing things to gain muscle mass or strength in an imbalance actually just further damage your body. So we just discuss truth. We discuss things as they are within our human natures, which is sinful by nature. We mess up, but we're just trying to share truth and help people with their own physical bodies, and ideally not live in pain, because as I always say, there would be no reason the body wouldn't work unless there was a reason that it couldn't. And that could be anything, but our bodies are just a mechanical machine designed to operate and just be our vessel to move us spirit children of our living God through this life. That's why we are called In the Image Clothing Company. We're all designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. So, centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ. Clothing for everybody, man or woman, fat, skinny, tall, short, any age. Pants need to be entirely above the hips so that they're off of the hips, and the hips can just have all the ranges of motion that they naturally have. Slightly higher in the front with the waistline than in the rear, because our core needs to contract, meaning shorten, to activate, and it would always be naturally activated because it's just the center of our whole being, unless it was altered by something external. And so having it higher in the front is what's going to allow that core to stay active, which is its only natural working. Let me make that very, very clear, especially within this episode, because of what I'm going to get into. And the tops that we wear, the seams on the tops of the shoulders need to be behind that little bone that's on top of the shoulders that's actually the other end of your collarbone, because that just allows your shoulders to be in their neutral position. Now, with button-up shirts, it's different because they have, if you're watching this in visual rather than just listening to this episode of the podcast in audio form only, then you can see this. If not, you're not really missing out. But on button-up shirts, the top shoulder seam, it's like a whole couple to few inches band of material that is what really the shoulder seam actually is. So button-ups are different. That's another thing that I'm kind of going into a little bit more depth within this episode than I normally mention when I just talk about where clothing needs to sit. I've definitely shown that before and explained it, but I think a big thing is because I'm wearing a button-up within this, I'm going to be talking a lot about shoulders positions within this episode of the podcast. So I know that these seams right here are in front of my shoulders, but it's just a different design with button-up shirts. So, and then ideally for the edge seams of our shoulder seams, they just stay right at the very edges because that's where our shoulders actually have their motion. And they hinge and pivot and rotate in that little ball and socket joint where that gleneral humeral head of the humerus, of the upper arm bone comes into the shoulder. So, yeah, we discussed the anatomy of the human body. We discussed the anatomy of the human body. We let the body work. So, key word is always allow. Allow the body to work. Now, yes, in addition to, it's just kind of throwing me off because I don't normally go into like as much explanation of what I just said within where clothing needs to sit. So it just seems different to me than how I normally discuss that. But in addition to just where clothing sits on the body to just allow it to be in its natural working position, two things that are our prerequisites just to allow the body to be unaltered, apart from / in addition to just having clothing sit correct. Our shoes need to be laced with the technique that we show. We have a technique that you can find where you find In The Image Clothing Company, wherever you can find us, being 2025, there's the internet. That technique, included with just tying your shoes evenly over toward the inside on both feet to have an even foundation, will allow your feet to be unaltered. And the second prerequisite is to just remove all tags from clothing, even within the shoes, because anywhere they're in a shoe, they're either changing the flexion of the ankle or they are not allowing that naturally gripped arch within the foot to be there. So if you can't get them quite out, just if you can roughen up the tag with a knife, with scissors, with anything, just to get it textured so that there's not that unnaturally slippery thing within your shoes. Okay. This episode 29 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, I am going to have a whole discussion on sleeping truths, because when it comes to sleeping, there's some very basically foundational things that will make or break the ability to just naturally sleep. And there's a lot of approaches that people have towards sleep, supplements, eating at certain times, the amount of lighting, the temperatures, the firmness of the thing they're sleeping on, all these things, and whatever the routines and the times, and wow, I mean, things that you can put into your nose, into your mouth, things like teeth guards. You've got topical creams that people place on, or certain lotions. They've got things they put into the air, fragrances or humidifiers, or, certain amount of noise or no noise, sound machines. You got all sorts of ways of approaching sleep. And then you've got unnatural things that people like to try to introduce, which should never be, except for very, 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 very specific cases, right? Times and places for things, but yeah, ideally nothing's ever unnatural unless it just, there was no other, I don't even know how to word that other than that. Yeah, just natural is the goal, right? So here's the thing. Our bodies are, like I said at the beginning there, a mechanical machine. Our bodies, they just do operations. The body has a system that does everything. The skeletal system supports the body. The musculature of the body moves the skeletal system. The digestive system takes stuff that we put into our bodies and uses it as fuel. We've got the respiratory system that allows us to breathe oxygen. We've got the circulatory system that pumps blood through the body. We've got all these systems within the body that just only do what they do, and only in the ways and positions that they do it in. So when it comes to sleeping, we approach sleeping the way that it needs to be approached, seriously. And that's through the skeletal system's natural position. Because within the body, all the organs that are doing their function, they are within the body's current position at that time. And that position of the body at any time that we are a human being is determined by the skeletal system. Your musculature can't determine the position of your body because your muscles move your skeletal system to change the position of the body. So it's the skeletal system that is determining the position of the body. Okay, that's everything we do. We address the skeletal system. That's why we are what we are. Yeah, that's what we do. So that's why it doesn't matter if you're fat or skinny or any height or anything, because everything just connects the way it does. Every joint connects a bone to another bone, and within those two bones and the joint in between, there's only the function that those things do. And that's it. So yeah, that's it. And I want to hit that hard right now before we move on. The body only does what it does. And I made a video one time for the main company side of things, and I titled it, "The Body Only Has One Position." Because really, when our body's working as it's designed to, and in its really foundational, natural, operable position, then we pretty much just move at the shoulder joints and hinge at the hips, and the elbows hinge and the knees hinge, but pretty very simple planes of motion the body does because it needs to stay activated at the core and through the entirety of it, because it naturally would be. That just seems like something that's pretty foreign to a lot of people. It seems so foreign to me before I started to learn what I did, and then eventually now have founded In The Image Clothing Company. But that is the truth. That is the only way the body actually does anything, and it's not something to get it to do, but we live within such a man-made world in 2025. Our clothing designs, if they're imbalanced, they're changing the body's position. If they're stretchy, the body can't react to that naturally, and so certain things will get tense and in different positions than they would naturally be in. We're within unnatural materials that our bodies are trying to avoid, but being placed on or in, or however that's going with the body, it can't get away from them. And that comes with bedding as well. I'm going to get into a lot of this. We're going to get into depth. So what I'm saying with all that right here is it's not hard to allow the body to work. But if we're so far out of touch with the body unaltered, just how it would naturally be, then it seems weird to say something like the body only works as a whole, and if not, there really is something going on that shouldn't be, because it's so common for people to be in these chronic pain states, and it's patternings from imbalances, from the stuff we talk about. So that's why we are what we are. That's why we are what we are. In the Image Clothing Company, we speak truth. It applies to everybody across the entirety of the globe. To what degree might vary, but it does. It is just truth. So let's get into this, because I wanted to hit that so clear right at the very start, so there's no confusion going into anything that I'm saying from this point forward about the body only having its only function, only working position, and that's it. Because what I was saying is, like, the organs within the body, they just sit within our being. And if the skeletal system's position is changed, the organs will change. The lungs will change, the ability to expand fully. The digestive system will be maybe pinched off or not fully working correct. Every part of the body, yeah, we'll get into it, but I just want to hit that, and then now let's get into this when it comes to sleeping and just allowing the body to continue to work while we're, like, in our physical understanding of things, unconscious. That's what sleeping is. Just resting the body, but only in a position that it's going to still work incorrectly. Because what happens is, well, I'll start it like this as far as discussing positions of sleeping. When we think about standing vertically, when we're standing and we're thinking about standing nice and tall, nice and erect, with our spine in a good position, very slightly curved, just the way that it would naturally stack, but pretty darn vertical, because that's the whole point, is gravity is going to pull us straight down. And so when we're standing, we're trying to stand pretty well just straight. Any more forward bend or tilt of the pelvis in any way, actually, that's out of its neutral, or, feet pointing anywhere that's not straight, and head leaning excessively over the body or looking excessively up or excessively down is just going to cause strain and tension as we're standing or moving vertically, like walking through our earth. So, if the intention, which it is to stand and walk as pretty well vertical as we just can be while just being natural. There's no intention, but just like, again, just staying stacked so that the body's just using least amount of energy that it can. That's what it's going to be, is very vertical, very, very vertical with just a very slight bend and everything. So we're just slightly into our ranges of motion, right? Think about your knees. You don't want them entirely locked out, but you just want them very, very slightly bent. You bend them more than just slightly, you're using a lot of muscle and fatiguing your body that doesn't need to be, and you lock them all the way out, and now your joints are just being compressed rather than the muscle being able to be what's taking the work, okay? So, pretty darn vertical, very slightly bent within the activation of the muscles through the whole body, activated and working as a whole. That's how the body works. That's how we stand. That's how we walk through life. Now, when it comes to sleeping, that's still the only position that the body actually works in as far as like an extended period of time. Sure, you can bend over and move around and you can get your body to have, there's a lot of ranges of motion within a naturally functioning, well-positioned body, the way that it is designed to work. But an extended period of time, it wants to be just in its neutral position, like standing. So when we sleep, if you take this image of what we think of standing very vertical with what people would call quote unquote good posture, really again just the only way the skeletal system actually stacks and connects with all things working together as a whole. You take that position from vertical standing and you drop it down horizontal into a bed. Okay? That position has not changed. The ideal functioning neutrally stacked position of the body is the same horizontal as it is vertical, okay? If you're just listening to this episode of the podcast and you can't see any of this in visual, it's also available to see in visual form with audio as well as just audio only. Don't feel like you're missing out, but I might do some descriptive things with my hands here as I'm sitting in front of this camera. But you can still get what you can get, meaning probably the same amount of things if you're just listening to this. So, we want to take that vertical body and just put it horizontal, but still working the exact same. Because when we're asleep, we don't have the consciously awake awareness of, hey, something doesn't feel quite right, let's adjust. But when you're awake, you do. Like when you're standing, if you're standing and you're in a position that just for some reason something is out of alignment, maybe you're standing on something that's a little bit uneven, that's a great explanation. You'll notice it because now your hips are out of their neutral position because your feet, one is higher than the other. You will be like adjusting for that to allow your body to continue to just work in its neutral position. Neutral and natural are synonyms when it comes to the human body. Now, and its physical function. So, sleeping, in order to keep that neutrally stacked body's position as if we were standing, you don't want to place a pillow under your head. Because that would be like standing and pushing your head forward the exact same distance as that pillow is placing your head up under your head when you're sleeping. So like I was saying, when you're standing, you want everything to be neutrally stacked. And if your head comes forward excessively, now everything is using energy in ways it's not designed to try to compensate for your head being out of its neutral position. So we actually don't want to sleep with pillows, meaning our bodies don't work the only way they actually work if there's a pillow placed under them when we sleep. They just don't. There's no opinion to that. There's no dispute, no kind of depends on your body shape or no. Because here's the other thing. I'm going to get really into this. That's not my only point. I'm not like wrapping it up. It just kind of sounded like it to me. But no, this is a big thing. That's why we are about the skeletal system of the human body, because no matter how much fat you have, first of all, that doesn't matter as far as like you don't have to feel a certain way about yourself because of that. But the skeletal system is our structure. Fat or muscle, it's on either end. That's a good thing to mention within right here, what I'm saying. Fat versus muscle can do such similar things as far as just something that's unnatural, the amount. Sometimes we can get excessive amounts of fat, but if you go to the gym and just get an excessive amount of muscle, that can really do the exact same thing in these ways. The skeletal system's our foundational thing. The body wouldn't be able to do anything without the skeletal system. That is what our body is. And then from there, everything gets placed onto it, right? That's why we call it the foundation. Like within the gospel of Jesus Christ, a firm foundation. We build our house on a rock, and from there, right, that's our foundation, the rock. And the rock is another name for our God himself, Jesus Christ. So no matter if there's fat on top of the skeletal system, or again, if it's muscle, if it's an unnatural amount, then the body would just be able to operate well with because of lifestyle choices, again, either with a good, quote unquote, or bad, quote unquote, intention. As far as even working out with the intention of aiding your body, if you've gained more muscle than your body would naturally have to work around, that's just as inhibiting 2 degrees and in ways as fat. It really is. So when we lay down, even if you have quite a bit of fat on your body, I want this to be heard correct, please, for your sake. Your skeletal system still only connects in the way that it does. So the thing is, if you've got like fat on your glutes and you're laying on your back, but you've got excessively large glutes because they're just an unnatural amount of fat, hear it correct, I'm not shaming people, but just the case, right? And that puts your spine into a position to where it's curving, and you feel like maybe putting a pillow under your head will accommodate for that excessive curve in the spine. That's false, because there's still only one way each bone within the body connects to the other bone that's next to it. And then from there to the next one, from there to the next one. The body's a chain. The body all works as a whole only. So, with that being said, I want to say this before I move on at all, because when it comes to clothing, I've talked about this and we will always talk about this. This is the case, always for humans forever. If you are wearing a waistline of pants and you have like fat either on your glutes, that's again excessive, just because it's the case, I'm not shaming anybody, but right, this is going to change your body's position, skeletal position of the foundation of you. If you have more fat on your glutes than would naturally be there because of lifestyle choices and things, right? Or on your stomach, either one of those things will place your waistband in a position to where the rear is higher than the front. And what that's going to do is deactivate your core, which should never happen, which would never happen without clothing because of that, right? The fat on your stomach will press the waistline down in the front. That will take your pelvis forward in the front and rotate it in a position that's called anterior. If you've heard of anterior pelvic tilt and a doctor has told you that you have that, it's not true as far as like something you have. It's just because your waistline of your pants is pulling you like that. I mean, there's other things as well, but it's something external. It's clothing. That's why we are in the Image Clothing Company. We discuss truth. Because you will never correct the position of your pelvis by addressing your body if you're within clothing that's pulling your pelvis out of its position. And that's actually the reason you have that going on. Again, not just the waistline, but the things that we discuss. We really do have, it's not about us, but we're just sharing the truth so people can know, really, undisputed. So when you're sleeping, your waistline from the fat in your stomach is either being pulled down in the front, or from the excess fat on your glutes is being pulled up in the rear, which is the same as being pulled down in the front. And clothing needs to sit, I said at the beginning, every single human being, because of the way the skeletal system connects, the way that the legs connect into the hip, which is the pelvis, and then the way that the pelvis connects into the spine, which goes all the way up, right? Legs go all the way down to the feet, spine goes all the way up to the head. And really, in a sense, all the way to the fingertips, because that's what I would say is the top of the body, because you raise your hands above your head and your fingertips are at the end, the opposite end of your feet, not the top of your head. But yeah, okay. Again, truth, universal truth, and the Image Clothing Company. This is the truth. So, if you have tags within the rear of your pants and you're trying to sleep on your back, that's going to slide your waistband like that, bringing the rear up, essentially bringing the front down, deactivating your core. Now you can't breathe. Just period. Whether you're in any kind of position, but you're trying to sleep. Now, if you have a drawstring in your pants and it's stitched into the rear, that will pull the rear of the pants up, essentially putting the front of them down, deactivating your core, and now you can't breathe. Not only can you not breathe, but your pelvis going forward like that, like tilting down in the front, anterior, is taking both of your legs and rotating them externally, collapsing your arches, deactivating your glutes and your hamstrings, putting more emphasis on your quads, putting an excess curve in your low back called the lumbar spine. So if you're feeling pain in your low back when you're sleeping, it's the waistline of your pants, at least in the ways that it is in this case. In addition to, there's other things that we discuss. We're giving truth. So don't have any kind of thing on your spine at all. Tags or stitching of that drawstring. Now, tying a drawstring where you're tying one side over the other, you're rotating your entire pelvis. You take the right side and tie it over the left side, then you're rotating your entire pelvis like this. If you're seeing it, if you can't see this, just either way, you're rotating it one way or the other. You know, you can imagine that if you're not actually watching this in visual. If you take the other side and tie it over this side, you're taking your whole pelvis and rotating it like that. And that travels down to the feet. One foot will go to that direction and the other foot will follow it. Or on the other side, that foot will go to that direction and the other foot will follow it. And it travels up to your head, to your shoulders, to your hands. It rotates your entire body because what I said, the pelvis being really the core in the sense where all the muscles of the core go into and all the muscles of the leg come up into, both legs, that will change your entire body because it's the center of you, right? We think about hinging at the hips, like you're going to bow. That's you're hinging at your center, at your hips, your pelvis, the base of your spine, the top of your legs, that whole big bone, that structure of the hips, okay? So it's got a lot going on. It's got rotations and it's got a lot of movement within the pelvis. So, because you just think about how much your upper leg moves. There's so much motion in each leg, and then the spine itself can move. There's a lot within the hips. So they're the center of our body. That is the core, is the hips. And our core needs to be always constantly activated in a centered position. The spine is in the center. The sternum, which is on the front of our bodies, where the rib cage comes into the middle, that is in the center. And our nose. Those are the three things I always mention. We have no say to having a center line. And if we are not to the best of our own abilities within that, our bodies will be in pain. Period. And done. So, I use what's called a slipped lap knot for drawstrings. Slipped, L-A-P-P, lap knot. And it allows the drawstring to stay entirely horizontal. I'm using it right now. I don't know if you can see this drawstring. I'm just kind of lifting it up so you can see, but that's what I use in everyday life. Sleeping, waking, because then my hips are just entirely, at least from what's holding my pants on, even. Now, that's huge. Secondly, if we wear shirts and they aren't sitting in a correct location, where the shoulder seams aren't behind the tops of our shoulders, that little bone that's the other end of the collarbone, then we won't be able to breathe from our shoulders as we sleep. So that has to happen. And then in addition to that, if your shoulder seams are oversized, meaning your shirt does not fit you and it's too large, then it's going to fall to one side or the other because the seams aren't like stopping at the edges of your upper arms, your deltoids, right? The edge of your shoulders. And so your shirt will slip around, and that will change your entire spine curvature. That will change the position that the collar sits around your neck and place more pressure on one side of your neck than the other. And then you'll be breathing imbalanced because we actually have diaphragms, which is what allows us to breathe within our neck as well as in our abdomen. So this little seam here, the dreaded collar seam that's up in the top of t-shirts, I quote unquote coined the term the dreaded collar seam. And we talk about that all the time within In The Image Clothing Company. That's huge for us. That little seam, we have a modification that you can go find within In The Image Clothing Company's videos. You'll find it. We've got it in many places because of how huge it is. That little seam causes the collar to sit off-centered anyway if it's not modified. And so now you're breathing with one side of your neck more than the other while you're sleeping, and that's just imbalancing your entire body. So there goes your center line. There goes your core activation just from that. Now, tags, right? It's one of our 2 prerequisites. They have to be out of clothing. They have to be out of clothing. Always. Sleeping, though, that's just going to cause a huge problem of trying to get the body to rest. That's what sleep is, as I discussed at the beginning. And so it can't do that if there's tags placed onto its spine, in the rear of a collar of a shirt, or, like I said, within the pants that will do what I said it does, as well as just be uncomfortable for your body. Now, a lot of times there's tags in the left side of clothing that's imbalanced, and that will take you out of your center line, deactivate your core. Okay, so very, very basic, very, very foundational things right there. No pillow, because otherwise you're taking your head and moving it out of its centered position in whatever way. Even if you're flat on your back and it's still centered left to right because you're just pushing it forward, now you're out of your center line forward and back, which is just as much a center line because the body still just only works the way that it's going to work through the rest of our lives. And if you're sleeping in a position that's not that, then you're training that and then trying to not be in that the rest of your life. So when we breathe, it takes the entire body in some extent to some degree to breathe. Stabilizing things is a lot of what's happening with things that are not anywhere near the lungs, but it still does use the entire body in some form. The body just always only works as a whole. So if you're sleeping and there's anything altering your breathing pattern at all from just the way that you would naturally be working as a whole through your daily life, then you're training a patterning through your entire body, even when you're unconscious, because you're breathing within an imbalance. So being very clear to have clothing fit correct while you sleep. It's so common for people to wear, myself in the past as well, oversized clothing to sleep, thinking that that's comfortable, and it is not. It's actually just entirely damaging your whole physical being. So clothing has to fit correct in every aspect of having anything placed onto your body, always. Otherwise, your body cannot actually work. And you'll be trying to do remedies to get it to when it just needs to be allowed to. That's it. Unless things do come up, and things do come up. That's why I always say there's no reason the body wouldn't work unless it couldn't. And then I say that could be anything. Yeah, there could be any reason, out of any reason that could possibly come up, the body couldn't work. But it is clothing if it is. Meaning if there's any imbalance whatsoever that's altering the body's natural only working position, then it's clothing. And that's the first thing to go to, because we're addressing the physical body, and that's the only physical thing placed on us. It's that obvious once we see it. Again, universal truth, undisputed, eternal. This will never change, ever. I'm going to sit on that for a second. Okay, so no pillows, clothing fitting correct at the positions, shoulders and hips, but also if it's on your wrists, like you're wearing something that's long and it's on your wrists, that will deactivate your shoulders and the muscles throughout the rest of your body from your hands. So keep clothing off of your wrists, just as we do in daily life. Keep clothing off of the tops of the feet, because even though you're unconscious and asleep, you still need to be activated as a whole. The body still just will work as a whole only and always. So keep things off of the top of your feet as far as long pants that you're sleeping in. And if you're going to sleep in socks, they really, really, really need to be put on correct. Our legs have this like slight outward bow to them naturally, as far as the bones themselves are just shaped that way, where they have a slight outward bow to that lower leg. But then also that's the way that an arch grips is inward. And so the whole position of the leg working naturally from the foot up to the hip is a little bit outwardly bowed, because that's actually how internal rotation happens, because that foot arch grips inward, causing that lower leg to follow. And then it has what's called a screw home mechanism within the knee. And the upper legs, even though it might not seem like they're really internally rotating, the whole leg unit as a whole is turning in, because that's the way that your feet are going to point with that gripped arch. And so there's that little bit of an outward bow and inwardly rotating of the whole leg as a whole unit. So when we place socks on, we need to pull them up and slightly outward, just very slight, to follow that outward bow of the leg, because that will actually allow the foot to rotate inward and the leg as a whole. Okay, we will talk about these things as we go on, but I want to be very clear to document all this within this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 29 on sleeping truths. So when you're sleeping with socks, just try to make sure that they stay in place, because that's the thing, is a lot of times you'll be sleeping and your socks will just like twist around on your leg, and that's going to just be pulling your foot in a direction that your arch won't naturally be, which is slightly inward. And then that travels from your foot up your leg to your hips. Now your hips have altered your spine that travels up to what you could say is the top of your head, but really all the way to the ends of your fingertips. Okay? Truth. So we need to sleep, no pillow, nothing underneath us. This is a big thing as well, is if your hands are going to just naturally rest against your chest, like if your hands were in front of you, on top of you, don't place a blanket between your hands/arms and your rib cage, because that's not just altering your hands and arms, that's taking your shoulders out of their natural position, because there's a gap here between your arm and your chest. It's pulling your entire shoulder capsule forward. So now your upper traps that come from the base of the rear of your skull down into your shoulders are out of their natural position, and the body can only work in its only natural position. So your breathing patterns will be entirely affected by that. So nothing between the body and itself as we sleep. Nothing unnatural underneath it, as far as ideally something pretty darn flat and firm. And then, nothing between like your knees, like from one knee to the other knee, nothing between there besides themselves. And nothing between your arms and your body, nothing between each of your arms, because that in itself will change the activation of your body. The body only works how it does as a whole, activated always. That includes when you're unconscious. So this is how you're going to sleep naturally. Now, In addition to those things, what's really beneficial is 100% natural materials. As we always say, as our clothing will always be in the Image Clothing Company clothing, when you're sleeping within materials that are man-made, you're essentially sleeping in oil. Polyester, acrylic, those kind of materials, whatever else you can get thinking about or making bedding out of that's man-made, they've taken things and melted them down in a factory and created that. So, as I always discuss, when we have things within our physical bodies that we're trying to address, it's common for people to take a topical cream and place it on the exterior of their body so that it goes through the skin, through the pores, those little holes in the skin, with the intent to heal or do something, whatever your intent in that case is, to the inside of your body. Now, this goes with clothing, but bedding is essentially becoming clothing for the night when you're sleeping because it's encapsulating your physical body. It goes into your body. It does. No dispute, no question, no belief, no opinion. So you're placing oil onto you, if it's polyester, it's just plastic, and it's going into your body the entire time you're sleeping. So ideally 100% natural materials are what the body's interacting with. There's always only natural until we make things unnaturally in a factory. It's fake, entirely fake. The body is natural. It doesn't like to mesh with things that aren't. So that is sleeping truths. I think that's actually just about all I'm going to say. I do. So there we go. Now, be intentional about it because you can go to all the sleep specialists you want. You can get I'm not going to restate all the things that I said at the beginning, but all those things that people try to do to get their body to sleep naturally while not allowing their physical body, which is the thing that is sleeping, to be in its only natural working position because they're doing all these other things. So that's how you're going to sleep natural. This is not my opinion. This is not me trying to sell anything. This is free information on In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Don't believe us. I always say, do not believe me as the founder and don't believe us as a company. But do this and find your body working. That's why we are what we are. We discuss truth, universal, undisputed, unchanging truths, because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, Jesus the Christ, who does not change. So if we're designed in his image, human beings will never change, and they won't. So these things do and will apply to human beings forever. There you go. That's how you're going to sleep naturally. It's about a position. The body's about a position, and that's it. As far as that's how you're going to... That's it. This is a hard-hitting one for me because it's just so real. It's another one of those things, just as everything that we talk about is, it's minimize, simplify, allow, right? Get rid of all these things that you're adding and keep the body in its only working state. And you've done it. But we didn't do it. We were given this body. This body was created for us and given to us. And all that I've described within this is how it works, which a lot of us just get very, very out of touch with, myself in the past, right? So there we go. Like I said, it's the 4th of January, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. We will have clothing available. 100% natural materials is what it will always be made out of. Staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. Oh, one other thing I'll mention, keep tops waisted while you sleep. Ideally keep them like the shirts that you wear. Don't let them go much farther past your hips. Otherwise, what you're doing in that case is essentially connecting your shoulders to your legs, but like outside of them from like the exterior of your shirt. And so as you rotate in the bed sleeping or whatever you're sleeping in or on, you will not be able to take your shoulders anywhere that your hips don't go. And yes, everything's going to stay centered because that's how your core is going to stay active if your body's working naturally, but it can like pull your shoulders down closer to your hips and things, right? Because your shirt gets behind your glutes and then pulls your shoulders out of their natural positions, or pulls your pelvis up from your shoulders moving. So that is another thing I'd say. Okay. All right. Thank you. This is real, man. This is real. We're only going to get bigger. We're going to do that just because we're not selling something to people. We're giving truth. So, thank you. Check out In the Image Clothing Company music if you'd like to. You'll get to see Frank the guitar, at least at this current time. This is what I do have as an instrument that I play there. So, the main side of the company, we've got videos and we've got all sorts of anything that we do have to just allow the body to work. Truth. We discuss truth. I want to hit that. Don't believe us. Just don't believe me. Please don't. Try these things. Try it. I don't care what your people have told you, your sleep specialists and your chiropractors and physical therapists, and I don't care. Yes, times and places for everything, but if people don't know truth, then they don't know, and they're longing for it, and that's why we have the company that we do. So, yeah. It just is what it is, man. It's so humbling to be able to share this information because, I mean, potentially people that have been taking sleep medication for years and whatever else they're trying to do to approach getting a nice, restful sleep for however many hours they're aiming for. If you're not doing these things, there is zero doubt and no way that this will not help you sleep, like, immensely, because all we're doing is just letting the body rest, other than fighting, because that's what happens on the other end, is you're fighting things. You're fighting to try to get away from these unnatural, slippery, weird feeling tags, and just, even if it's natural material, just the gap it's causing. You're fighting, like I was saying, the collar of your shirt just being unevenly around your neck, and you're trying to breathe centered, but like your body's just a sensory machine in that sense of it. Like, it's sensing just something against one side and not the other, and so it's just reacting different. You're fighting, like I was saying, if your socks are rotating on your ankles and your legs just can't stay straight. You notice how you sleep. Maybe you can. A lot of people can notice that they can't seem to keep their legs straight. One of your legs has to seem like it's so out, and the other one is mostly straight. A lot of that's drawstrings, unevenly tied. But also, this is a big thing to mention. You can be wearing the most ideal things to sleep and having your body entirely centered on something quite firm and extremely flat, not having things between your body and itself. In the most ideal position, no pillow, right, as I've discussed. But if you are within a patterning from clothing for decades or years or even just months or weeks, then that patterning is still within your own physical body, something that just needs time and potentially, as I talk about, one-time releases with your own physical body, like your own hand to release stuck scar tissue or bound up muscle just from a patterning for so many years. Unless you get out of that patterning, don't expect like an immediate fix, because you can tie your drawstring entirely even, but if the insertions of the musculature that's going into your hips is imbalanced because you're still just within a patterning, that will go away, but it just needs time and to be addressed. To do that, just allowed to, then that patterning will still cause your hips to be in a rotation until it's no longer there, even if everything is centered externally in that time until you're out of the patterning. I mean, it's just truth. It's just the body's been compensating for so many years, being pulled and pushed with drawstrings, zippers, shoelaces, oversized things, imbalances, dreaded collar seams, to where muscles have just started to change their location of insertion to bones because everything's just been slightly out of place for X amount of how much time it's been. It's just truth. There's no opinion that we have here. No opinion. Please just, not for us, not for me, but for your own sake, that's why we're doing this. Please try these things without dismissing it first, because you might have been to doctors and they tell you that you have this sleep condition and you have to have a machine that's putting something into your body, whether it's oxygen or it's some kind of like thing they're pumping into you, or you have to sleep with a mouth guard, says the doctor. Not true. Within a patterning, that might be something that seems like it's helping, but no, the body only connects the way that it does. It only works how it does. It doesn't matter your current state. The body being in an unnatural position just has to be allowed to not be. I mean, that's it. Because yeah, in your current situation, that's the thing, is you might be doing things that you say, well, no, you're saying I don't need a mouth guard, but it helps me when I sleep. Okay, yes, it could in your current imbalance, but now you're just relying on an unnatural, artificial thing being placed into you because your body itself is in an unnatural position. And to the extent and degree that your own personal situation allows it, you can get out of these chronic patternings. And it's so much easier than it might seem. And we show that within In the Image Clothing Company. That is what we are. So, allowing the body to work, okay? Because the same thing with that example I just said about the mouth guard, sleeping with a pillow. If like how I said, you might be trying to say, well, but it does aid me currently, right? You could be saying to have a mouth guard within your mouth while you sleep to cause your teeth to sit in a different position, or your jaw, or to cause you to stop snoring or breathe better. But, well, first of all, a lot of that's probably just tags within clothing and oversized clothing, shoulder seams sitting incorrect, hips being twisted, right? That's the thing, we just discussed truth. When you go to start sleeping without a pillow, that's going to be new for your body because, like I'm saying, waking and sleeping are the same position. The body only works how it does. Everything only connects the way that it does. There's no possible opinion to that. Now, if you're in a position during your waking life where your head is so excessively forward because of incorrect patternings, then sleeping, going from what you've been used to with a pillow under there to accommodate for the incorrect position because of the imbalance within your waking life, that's not accommodating, but it's just feeling more comfortable because it's what you're used to in your current time, and your muscles and bones, like I'm saying, are just used to being in this incorrect position to the degree that they can be quote unquote used to that. Once you stop using a pillow, it can actually hurt potentially. I'm just saying that as like, I know, I get it. Don't think that that means you need a pillow. See what's really happening, because again, only working position. The chin will tuck. The spine will be very, very neutral with that slight curvature to it that's naturally there. So in order to get back to that, though, things need to be allowed to adjust to their actual natural / neutral synonyms, right? So at first, that's the thing with what we discuss, is it's stuff that at first it might be like painful to sleep without a pillow, but that's understandable. So just do what you need to and what you can to maybe like lessen the height of your pillow as you start to remove tags from the rear of your collars and your shirts. Because that's the thing, you're going through your daily life with your shirt collar tag in the rear of your shirt, causing a gap, pushing your head forward. And so now sleeping, yeah, you just have to have time for your body to adjust back to its only actual natural. But it's just truth. Don't believe me. Do not. But that's why I like to discuss things so thoroughly. That's why a lot of our videos are quite long, because I just want to discuss it to the point where it's like, yeah, there's no way this guy's trying to get us to believe something. He's just speaking stuff that most people don't understand within this modern man-made world. So that's just how it is. It's just truth. So there we go. The big thing that I want to hit with that is don't give up. Don't try to sleep one night after watching this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast or listening to what we discuss within In the Image Clothing Company. Well, on anything, that's a good thing to mention just as I'm saying this. Anything we show or say or talk about that is just truth. It might take a little bit of time for your body to get back to its workings. But if you're within pain, then your body is not in its natural workings. The body naturally would not have pain. It's designed to function. And we all have our own situations and degrees of being able to do what we can within our own situations. But yeah, the body shouldn't have pain unless there was like an actual reason that was causing it, that was unnatural or just, very specific, very, very specific case. So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's why I said that a minute ago. I hit it, and I very, very, very thoroughly explain it, because don't believe me. It's just truth. So, yeah. All right. Sleep's a huge thing, man. I mean, you can't have a good waking life without having rest of your physical being. Because your brain, I mean, your thoughts and your cognitive ability is just an electrical system. Physically, like, synapses are like firing off. We are spirit children, but as far as the functionality of our physical body, it's just an operable machine. And it needs to be able to rest, but we need to be able to let it. So, all right, man. It just hits me. There's so much potential to buy into it, pillows and bed types and extra softness. But if your body's going to activate always and stay in that constant activated state as a whole, and that's how it actually works, no dispute, no question, no workouts to do. That's just how it's designed, as an animal would. I mention all the time how much I love bears. A bear has its body working as a whole always, because there's nothing placed on it to alter it. Human beings are set apart because we place things onto us. Now, sleeping on a excessively soft thing, whether it's a bed or whatever you're sleeping on, could be anything that you just lay down to sleep on, your muscles have to contract and tighten to activate. And that's the state they would always be in. They can be pretty relaxed, but while still being like activated, right? I don't want to try to overly explain that within this episode of the podcast, but I want to be very clear to say that when you sleep on a bed that's softer than you need, you're actually deactivating your entire body, and that's actually weakening it. Because it should never, in any part of it, be deactivated, because it can only actually work as a whole. I mean, it's all connected to everything else on it. It can't go anywhere without all of it going somewhere, unless part of it gets cut off, and that happens. But I just want to make it like as silly in a sense as it is. I'm discussing truth. So our what we sleep on needs to be quite firm. It really does, in order for our muscles to stay activated. Okay. So that is actually what I'm going to say now. Now it is actually time to wrap this up. The gospel of Jesus Christ is the truth of all things. We are centered on and around that here at In The Image Clothing Company. We are going to grow. Not me saying something. I'm saying it, and it's going to happen. But it's not about me. It's not about me. Yes, I will make a living off of this. But this is truth. Period and done. Please do your best to listen to it. That phone just made a beep, and this phone in this house never gets used, and I didn't touch it. I've never heard it make that sound. So I don't know. Anyway, we're going to get huge. In the Image Clothing Company, it's going to be huge. And everything we always talk about will always be the same. The way that I discuss how sleeping needs to happen, because the way that the human body actually will be able to sleep will always be as I'm addressing it within this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 29 on sleeping truths. So thank you. We got to get out of these chronic patternings, and then we work, as in physically function. Okay. Darn, man. It's really cool. Keep your body being allowed to work. I just think it's hitting me how huge this episode is, because within our name, we are in the image, right? The gospel clothing company. But we're not just clothing. That's what we're going to sell, for the availability for people to have the option for their bodies to just work naturally without having to do modifications to other things. We're going to do everything that we can to allow our clothing to work for people as long as they try to get it in their actual size, not oversized. But we also will always address things like eating and sleeping and walking naturally and sitting naturally, and within In the Image Clothing Company music, how to actually sing correct, because again, the body only works how it does, and all singing is pushing air across chords that vibrate, that we call vocal cords, that make a sound. So it just has to be in a position to allow that to be in what we call tune, right? Which is just a pitch of sound. Like, when we look at things as they are, stuff gets easier. Stuff then actually works correctly. And that's what we do here at In the Image Clothing Company. So, yes, our name does say clothing company, but we gotta do what we can to share. I think that's what I'm saying is, never will it be a wrong thing or like a egoic thing on our part to say to share In the Image Clothing Company. Like, for me to get like some kind of recognition within the world, that's not what it is. I want people to, if it's authentic to you, I'm not telling you to go share this with everybody and anybody and whatever, but what I mean is, we are going to spread and grow just because it's truth. Every single person has a body, because I can phrase it this way. Everybody has a body, or else you're not a human being. You don't exist in this physical fleshly form if you don't have a physical fleshly body. So, yeah. Okay, that's probably what it is. I felt like there's more to say. Please hear this correct. I'm not trying to push anything, but our company is gospel-centered. When we go to sleep, we're resting our bodies that we've been given. It is beautifully important and beneficial to pray to our God and thank Him at the end of the day as we lay down to sleep, to rest our being, for the being that we've been given, for the ability to be able to rest, and we can communicate with Him, and our God speaks to us more intimately than any human being ever could. He knows us better than we could ever know ourselves. So if it comes to sleeping and feeling like you need to get more rest than you have been, or wondering how to do that, don't ask me and don't believe me. But what I'm doing within In the Image Clothing Company is just trying to share, to the best of my sinful by nature human being ability, truth. And so everything that you're hearing from me, as far as if it's true, you could also hear it personally from our living God through revelation. So I want that to be very clear. It's not about me. That's why I always say, don't believe me. I mean it. I don't mean not to believe the words that I'm saying, but don't believe Evan Strong. Evan Strong, being me, is just somebody trying to relay truth to humans. So pray, man. Nights and mornings are great times to pray. We are commanded to pray continuously without ceasing, but that's something we're never going to actually do as far as legitimately continuously without ceasing, because we're sinful by nature, human beings. But if there's times when you want to try to, have a time in your day where you can make sure and do all that you can to set apart time to pray. Ideally, always we are praying, but mornings and nights, right when you go lay down to rest and right when you wake up. A lot of Psalms within the Old Testament about sleeping, a lot of scriptures about rest, and really the only real true rest is within the presence of our God. And I'm not making this something it isn't. I don't know who you are hearing this and where you're coming from or what background you have on anything, but every aspect of your life will be more restful if you do all that you can to follow our shepherd, our living God, Jesus Christ. And that's something that, another one of those, don't believe me, Evan Strong, but it's just the truth. So, yeah, thank you.